Good morning, everybody. My name is Jeff Spicco. I'm the Director of Membership here at San Diego Zoo Global, and I want to welcome everyone to our first Wildlife Hero Talk of 2017. As you all know, our Wildlife Hero Talks are a quarterly web series where we provide you with the opportunity to hear directly from San Diego Zoo Global's key conservationists that are around the globe working on various projects to save animals from the brink of extinction. We're going to start off this year and feature a species that we've received a lot of requests for. And of course, I'm talking about the giant panda. And I'm thrilled to have with us today our panda expert, Dr. Megan Owen. Megan serves as San Diego Zoo Global's Associate Director of Recovery Ecology. She oversees the division's large carnivore research projects, including the giant panda, the polar bear, and the Andean bear projects. Megan's work spans across a range of conservation applications, from conservation breeding to developing post-release monitoring strategies to mitigating the impacts of industrial activities in critical habitats. She's earned her bachelor's and her master's degree in ecology and evolutionary biology from City College of New York and her doctorate in ecology and evolutionary biology from the University of California at Los Angeles. She serves as a member of the IUCN's Captive Bear Expert Team. She's a behavior advisor on the Giant Panda Species Survival Plan and a research advisor to Polar Bear International. So please join me in welcoming Dr. Megan Owen. Megan, I'll turn it over to you.
Great. Thank you, Jeff. That was a really nice introduction, and I wanted to emphasize that I'm certainly not the only panda expert here at the San Diego Zoo, and one of the things we'll talk about as this goes on is the incredible teamwork across different scientific and animal husbandry disciplines that really make what we do special. So I'm going to talk to you about our panda program over the last 20 years. And while I would love to say that this is going to be a comprehensive talk to our 20 years of work, it's really going to be primarily focused on conservation breeding and all of our efforts to make this a successful program. Now this question, giant panda conservation and what can we do to ensure that giant pandas survive long into the future is sort of founded on a really fundamental question. What do we need to know about giant pandas to save them from the brink of extinction? The tools that we bring to this question include science, conservation science, which comes in many forms, including behavioral ecology, reproductive physiology, chemical ecology, veterinary science, you name it, we do it here, and we bring everything we can to giant panda conservation. We merge our scientific expertise with the best possible animal care, and this includes animal husbandry and veterinary science. Of course, education is an incredibly important component of everything we do, and diplomacy is also important. And when I say diplomacy, I mean building personal relationships with others who are working towards giant panda conservation and making sure we understand how the Chinese government works towards the same end. So our research has been primarily focused, as I said, on conservation breeding, and this includes focuses on behavior and physiology, focuses on social communication between male and female giant panda, as well as giant panda mothers and their cubs. Also learning as much as we can about the reproductive technologies that can help us improve the rate of conservation breeding of giant pandas, understanding what maternal care looks like in the species, and also understanding what is optimal health and well-being for giant pandas. And we've also been focused on giant panda ecology, and primarily that work has been focused in the field. So for all of our work, collaboration is the key, and that means collaboration amongst the different folks that are working towards giant panda conservation here at the San Diego Zoo, but also, and perhaps even more importantly, with our colleagues in China. We've been very lucky in that our panda program has been focused in 3 very different locations, and these different locales enable us to really look at panda biology across different scales. We've been focused on giant panda biology really in incredible detail here at the San Diego Zoo. We've also been working for the past 20 years with our colleagues in China at the various breeding facilities and other captive facilities there. And again, we've been also focusing on understanding what giant pandas need to survive in the wild. Most of that research has been at the Foping Nature Reserve, but we're also moving in a different direction there as well. So what makes pandas unique? Why is understanding the specifics of their biology so important to enabling them to survive into the future? Well, giant pandas are unusual in some ways, not so unusual in others. They are, of course, a bear species, and like most bears, they're basically solitary animals, and they breed seasonally. And so this means that they roam far and wide in the mountains of south central China, where they call home. But then when the breeding season comes along, giant panda males and females have to be able to find each other. The cubs that the giant panda female produces are incredibly small and completely dependent on their mothers for everything they need for survival. Again, this is a feature that's common to all bear species, but giant panda cubs are even smaller and even less developed than other bear species. So a giant panda cub, when it's born, is about the size and weight of a stick of butter. Its eyes are closed. It has no fur. It is completely dependent on its mom for everything it needs to survive. And this is a very, very vulnerable time in the panda life cycle. So understanding maternal care and how a mother can ensure survival of these undeveloped cubs is key. Sorry, I'm just having problems advancing a slide, but we will resolve this. Here we go. Okay. Another factor about giant panda biology that really does make them unique is they're completely dependent on bamboo for their nutrition. And this is really unusual when you think about a bear that's about 200 pounds, and they get all of their calories from bamboo, which is a very, very low calorie, low nutritional food source. What does this mean for giant pandas? It means that they need to eat upwards of 14 hours a day. And here at the zoo, we'll find our pandas might eat up to 50 pounds of bamboo a day. And this means that having bamboo that is in season and has the highest possible nutritional content is incredibly important for their survival in their native habitat. So this system of biology might seem kind of unusual and potentially putting pandas at risk in and of itself. But in fact, it works very well for giant pandas. They don't have to compete with any other large carnivores for access to that bamboo. And this is really a finely tuned system that's evolved over thousands and thousands of years. Unfortunately, though, habitat loss and habitat fragmentation in their habitat has really put a tremendous amount of pressure on giant panda populations. And while we don't know in great detail what the historic population numbers were for giant pandas, we know now that in the past 30 years, their population has been as low as about 1,200 individuals. And these 1,200 individuals have been in a habitat that's been highly fragmented and under a lot of pressure from human development and agriculture. So in 1996, when our giant panda program began, the future did not look so bright for the giant panda. In fact, as far as conservation breeding was concerned, there were probably only about 100 giant pandas in captivity around the world. Most of these, of course, were in China. Of these 100 or so animals, only about 40% of females would come into estrus and have a breeding season. Again, out of this 100 animals, only about 6 males had ever bred in captivity. That is an incredibly low number. And again, in 1996, there were only about 1,200 giant pandas left in the wild, a small population with a downward trajectory. So the future was not looking bright for giant pandas. So it's amidst this backdrop that we welcome giant pandas here to the San Diego Zoo on our first breeding loan. So in 1996, Bayun and Shusha, the male, arrived in San Diego. So Bayun, of course, we all know and love her. She is an incredible panda, and we feel incredibly lucky every day we get to take care of her and learn more about giant pandas from her. So Shishi was also a fantastically wonderful bear who we loved dearly. But unfortunately, even though we received them as part of a breeding loan, Shishi was not at all interested in breeding Bayun. And so while we were ready to learn everything we could about breeding behavior in giant pandas, Shishi was making this very difficult for us. He was far more interested in eating than he was in breeding. That all changed, of course, in 2003 with the arrival of Gao Gao. So it's hard for me even to talk about Gao Gao without filling the air with superlatives. He has been a fantastic animal to our program, and he has really enabled us to learn a lot about giant panda breeding. So Gao Gao arrived in 2003, and it just so happens that after his arrival, and just about 2 or so weeks after he emerged from quarantine, Bayun came into her estrus. And because giant pandas are spontaneous ovulators, once her estrus begins, she's the one who's manning the calendar. When it's time to breed, it's time to breed. And Gao Gao stepped up and was ready. And so we were able to witness the first natural breeding of giant pandas here at the San Diego Zoo. And what that enabled us to do was to not only learn everything we possibly could about what good breeding behavior looks like, but we were also able to study the physiology of giant panda breeding as well. And this was really important for us to develop tools that we could use as part of our conservation breeding program. Even more important and more exciting was our ability to really study pregnancy in great detail and understanding what pregnancy looks like, developing novel technologies to study and diagnose pregnancy, including the first voluntary ultrasound of a giant panda. And this is a tool that we've used in each successive pregnancy that Bayun has had, where our animal care team, including our keepers and veterinary staff, work very, very closely together to keep Bayun happy and allow us to image the panda fetus as it develops. And this is really important because the cub is so small, we can't see that Bayun is pregnant. We need to be able to use other tools in order to determine this fact, and this allows us to understand the timing of impending birth and making sure everything is ready for her. Of course, maternal care, again, Bayun has really stepped up and provided us with an opportunity to study what panda maternal care looks like when it's done well. Bayun has had 6 cubs here at the San Diego Zoo, and with each pregnancy, we've been at the ready to zoom in and help Bayun if we felt that she needed it. Our veterinary care staff, our nursery staff, our keeper staff, our researchers, everyone watching her from a distance, making sure things were going well, and we haven't had to lift a finger. Bayun has shown us what perfect maternal care behavior looks like in giant pandas, and we have learned an incredible amount from this. Cub development, that's also been an incredibly exciting area for us to study, and you can imagine studying something that looks like this has got to be really, really hard. In fact, it's one of the great pleasures of our job. And again, Bayun has had 6 cubs, 3 males and 3 females. And this balance between male and female has allowed us to get a sense of differences that may arise between the 2 genders as they develop, as well as how different personalities play into cub development. Each of our 6 cubs has had a really unique personality, and this has been a true joy for us to watch. So I think it's safe to say that we've had a very successful run here with conservation breeding at the San Diego Zoo. 6 cubs, each unique, each has taught us something different about giant pandas. And while our work has been unfolding in this way over the past 20 years, it's safe to say that in Wolong they've had equal, if not greater, success. And their programs have capitalized on some of the same things that ours has in terms of learning about giant pandas, learning more about their biology, and importantly, learning how to better care for giant pandas, ensuring that the conservation breeding program is meeting its ultimate goals. So 2017, things are indeed looking up for the giant panda. There are now actually over 400 giant pandas in conservation breeding centers around the world. And it's easy to say that the giant panda population is in fact self-sustaining in these conservation breeding contexts. At this point in time, most adult females show normal estrus and breeding behavior, and about 60% of males now will actually breed naturally in conservation breeding settings. And this is a really important improvement for our program and the program worldwide. So now, what happens next? We have conservation breeding is going incredibly well, but there's a tremendous amount more we need to do to ensure that the giant panda survives long into the future, and we continue to do the best possible conservation science in support of that. So we go back to Wulong, where so much of our research has begun, and we are changing our program as they are changing their program as well. So Wulong, which was long a center for conservation breeding, the actual facility in Hecaoping is now the primary center for reintroduction training. So it's important to remember that animals that will be reintroduced are it's not just open the gate and let them go into the mountains. There is a training process that they undergo to ensure that they have the appropriate behaviors to survive into the wild. And also, in order for us to develop those targets of behavioral competency, we need to understand in more detail what those behaviors are. So this is a long-term study that we're embarking on. I'm also happy to say that many of our offspring from here at the San Diego Zoo are participating in the reintroduction program. Now, of course, bears that were born here at the San Diego Zoo will not be released into the wild, but their offspring may well be. So both Wamei and Sulin have spent time at the pre-release training facility, and their cubs have been candidates for release. And so Hualong, who was Wamei's last cub, was once a candidate for release. And then through the dedicated study of the staff there, they decided that Hualong was in fact not a good candidate for release. So it's very much a process, and it's very much a thoughtful process. So Dujianyan, which was a city that's near the Wulong Center, that was actually at the center of the 2008 earthquake that just so devastated that region, was recently rebuilt. And the Dujianyan facility is now a center for scientific research. And this includes veterinary science, disease science, and anything else that supports giant panda conservation efforts. So it's a tremendous resource that we all get to capitalize on. At Bifengsha, which is another facility that is a conservation breeding focus, and this is near the town of Ya'an in Sichuan province, Bifengsha is now the Center for Conservation Breeding in that region, and they've done a tremendous job. I think last year about 25 cubs were born at the Bifengsha facility alone. And at the Bifengsha facility, we're focusing our efforts to improve our understanding of conservation breeding. Now, keeping in mind that our goal is to provide a pool of potential reintroduction candidates that can survive in the wild, we need to make sure that the best possible candidates are being born and raised, and that we really understand in tremendous detail what it takes to be a successful panda in the wild. And again, the goal is to not just release pandas into the wild, but to release individuals that can become a part of the breeding population in the wild. So we have a number of different studies focused in Bifengsha that are really setting out to get those details, understanding the social dynamics, and what allows a giant panda to do well amongst the breeding population. Now, if we take us back to here at the San Diego Zoo, 20 years this project has been going on. That means our pandas are 20 years older. The success of the giant panda program here and in China means that giant pandas are living to be older in the captive setting. And Gao Gao well exemplifies this. Gao Gao's had an incredible life, and he continues to bring just tremendous joy to all that come to visit him and all that have the luxury of taking care of him. But as an older bear, he has a number of health issues that we need to make sure that we are addressing. So Gao Gao has become sort of a focal animal for developing the best possible approaches to geriatric care for giant pandas. And this includes a number of very novel veterinary techniques and also utilizing the best possible health resources we can. We do cardiac ultrasounds with Gao Gao. He's trained so that we can monitor his blood pressure voluntarily. He even gets acupuncture. All of these tools we're developing and we're sharing with our colleagues in China to make sure that the population as a whole, as they age, receives the best possible care. So in 2016, we had some fantastic news. The International Union for the Conservation of Nature, or the IUCN, downlisted the giant panda from endangered to a status of vulnerable. And this is truly an incredible occasion. And while we are still mounting conservation efforts to continue to manage giant panda populations long into the future because they will need that assistance. This is sort of indicative of how conservation efforts can be successful. If 20 years ago we all threw up our hands and did nothing to help save the giant panda, then we wouldn't be celebrating this downlisting. This downlisting is a product of conservation efforts coming to fruition and improving the status of the giant panda. I think it's important to note here that the primary driver behind this change in status has to be the setting aside of reserves in China for giant pandas and all the other animals that share that habitat with them. Since 1996, when there were 5 reserves for giant pandas in China, now there are 67 reserves in giant panda habitat set aside for giant pandas. These reserve systems have had a tremendous impact on giant panda populations. But it's important to remember that we're not out of the woods yet. Giant pandas will need our protection long into the future, and our research efforts need to not just continue, we really need to ramp it up. Changes that are happening on a global level are impacting giant pandas too. As a matter of fact, climate change models have predicted dramatic impacts on giant panda habitat, which might mean that a whole different system of reserves might need to be set aside, and other efforts might be needed to be initiated to ensure that these impacts don't have a negative effect on giant panda populations. So our work is really just beginning.
Thank you so much, Megan. That was great. We actually do have some time, so we're going to take some questions from our audience. A lot of you have been submitting them, so we're going to go through and try to answer as many as we can. So let's get started with that.
Great.
So we have one from Dorothy. Dorothy wants to know what factor has had the greatest influence on the rebound of giant wild panda populations?
It's a fantastic question, and I have to say that I think habitat protection has had the biggest impact on the status of giant pandas, and that's something we really want to continue into the future. But all of the efforts that have been mounted to save the giant panda have had a positive impact.
Annie wants to know what regulations need to be put in place to ensure the long-term health of panda populations?
That's a harder question to answer, actually. I mean, ultimately, because, again, habitat preservation is the biggest aid to panda conservation, good consumer choices and making sure you're thinking about the environment in your day-to-day actions and how you support different legislations, all of this comes into play and will benefit giant pandas and wildlife everywhere.
Caitlin has a question. She wants to know how many giant pandas were left in the wild when the breeding program began back in 1996.
Sure. Back in 1996, we estimate there were about 1,200 giant pandas left in the wild. And this very low number was primarily a result of a die-off event that happened in the late 80s corresponding to a loss of bamboo. And since then, of course, the giant panda population has rebounded, but there are still only about 1,900 giant pandas left in the wild. That's not a lot of pandas.
We also have one sort of on that same topic from Susan. How do solitary giant pandas find one another during the breeding season?
That's one of my favorite questions. Giant pandas are solitary, as you just mentioned. Finding one another takes this incredible system of communication that relies on scents and scent marks. So one panda will leave a scent mark on a tree or a rock in the habitat, and the idea is that another panda will come across that scent mark and realize, oh, there's another panda around. But the information contained in that scent is more than just there's another panda around. The information contained in that scent includes information on the individual identity of the animal that left it, the age of that individual, how long ago they left that scent, and importantly, it has sort of time-sensitive information about when, if it's a female, she might come into estrus. This is incredible work, and we know this because of research that we focused on over the last 20 years.
Let me see. Trudy. Trudy wants to know, do we have to return all cubs to China born here in the United States?
Yes, we do. And that's because our giant pandas are here on loan, and we're part of a bigger conservation initiative. So what's most important is that all pandas that are born as part of a conservation breeding program are part of the larger breeding population. We want to contribute to the future of giant pandas. So as much as we hate to see any of the pandas here go, we know it's for the good of the species.
I think it's Rona or Rana. Hope I'm saying that correctly. How long is a panda supposed to live naturally in the wild?
So our best estimate in terms of the lifespan of a wild giant panda would be about 20 years, and that would certainly be an average. There are certainly pandas that have lived a bit longer, but about 20 years is sort of a typical lifespan for a bear in the wild. Of course, here in the zoo, they live quite a bit longer because they have daily meals that are brought to them, the best possible veterinary care, and not a single whim or need goes unmet. So it's a little bit different here at the zoo.
I like this question. It's from Kelly. Kelly wants to know, what can the public do to help the panda population increase?
One of the things the public can do is learn all they can about giant pandas and what their needs are in the wild. I think the more we understand about the basic needs of giant pandas and other wildlife, the more sort of vested we are in their survival and really understanding what they and their habitat bring to human populations as well.
Then we're going to go to Dan. Do the zoos outside of China that have pandas work together on giant panda projects?
Everything giant pandas is collaboration. So yes, all the zoos outside of China, we meet regularly and we discuss prevailing research questions, conservation needs, how things are changing, and what we can do as a group to improve the conservation status of giant pandas. So collaboration is absolutely the key.
And I think we have time for one more, so why don't I pick this one from Diane. Diane wants to know, how many grandbabies does Bayun have?
Bayun has a long lineage developing. Bayun has 11 grandbabies that have been born. And this includes, actually, I'm sorry, it's more than that. Wame alone has had 11 offspring. And Sulin has had 2, and Zhenzhen has also had 2. And now, actually, one of Wame's offspring has also fathered a cub. So Bayun is actually a great-grandmother.
Great. Well, that was very helpful, Megan. Great information. I want to thank Megan for joining us today. It was incredible information, and I want to thank all of you on the line today. Megan spoke about the collaboration that we do and the partners that we work with on our conservation efforts here at San Diego Zoo Global. All of them are critical to our work. But without a doubt, our most important partner in the fight to save species from extinction is you. Without your vital support, we could not do the work that we do. So on behalf of all of us here at San Diego Zoo Global, I want to thank you for joining us today. I want to thank you for your dedication and support, and I want to thank you for loving animals as much as we do. While we're making great progress in our conservation work, specifically with the giant panda, there is, just as Megan said, so much more to be done. If you'd like to learn more about our panda conservation work, how you can help, or even make a donation, you can visit us at endextinction.org/pandas. So thank you again so much for joining us today. I hope you enjoyed the presentation. I hope you'll join us again next quarter, and have a great day. Thank you so much.